2025 hasn't held back its fury. A wedding proposal balloon went up in flames over Brazil, a cutting-edge Dreamliner tore through Ahmedabad's skyline, and above Washington the unthinkable happened, a mid-air collision over the Potomac. And that's only the beginning. Over the next 8 disasters, we'll peel back the headlines to reveal the human stories and hard-won lessons behind each tragedy. Ready to see which event tops the list? Let's dive in. Number 8. On March 28, 2025, at 12:50 p.m. local time, a powerful 7.7 magnitude earthquake struck just north of Mandalay, Myanmar. Ancient temples and the 91-year-old Ava Bridge collapsed, while thousands of homes crumbled in Mandalay, Sagaing, and neighboring regions. Early reports spoke of over 1,000 dead and more than 2,000 injured, figures that later climbed above 3,600 as rescue teams uncovered more devastation. With the government declaring a state of emergency across 6 regions, the United Nations and Red Cross mobilized immediately, racing to deliver search and rescue support, medical aid, and emergency supplies to survivors. Number 7. On the morning of February 28, 2025, a roaring wall of snow and ice thundered down the slopes of Uttarakhand's Shamli district, burying a Border Roads Organization work camp at Mana under tens of feet of avalanche debris. Dormitory containers and equipment were instantly swept away, trapping dozens of workers in a frozen tomb. Rescue teams raced against time in sub-zero temperatures, digging through the wreckage by hand and with heavy machinery, ultimately pulling 8 men to safety and mourning the loss of 8 others. As helicopters plucked survivors from perilous heights, the nation watched in shock and solidarity, rallying to support families left behind. Number 6. On the morning of February 26, 2025, a Sudanese Air Force Antonov An-26 lifted off from Omdurman Military Airport, but barely a minute into its flight, it veered off course and plummeted into a crowded residential district. The impact obliterated several homes and shops, trapping families beneath twisted metal and brick. In the chaos that followed, emergency crews worked feverishly to pull survivors from the wreckage, but all 17 crew members and 29 civilians perished. The government declared 3 days of national mourning as communities grappled with grief. Number 5. On March 21, 2025, parched forests in South Korea's Gyeongsang and Wheeseong regions ignited under unrelenting dry winds, sparking a series of wildfires that would rage for 8 harrowing weeks. Blazes leapt across ridges and valleys, consuming ancient pine stands and racing toward villages as embers rode gale-force gusts. Fire crews and military units battled day and night, deploying thousands of personnel, helicopters, and water-dropping aircraft to hold back the infernos. Evacuation orders uprooted some 23,000 residents, while emergency shelters overflowed with families clutching precious possessions. Dozens of firefighters suffered injuries, and at least 32 civilians lost their lives amid collapsing structures and suffocating smoke. As the flames finally abated on May 15, scorched earth and smoldering ruins marked a landscape forever altered, and a nation left to rebuild homes, heal communities, and reforest devastated woodlands. Number 4. On the first week of March 2025, relentless downpours unleashed record-breaking floods across New South Wales, swelling rivers far beyond their banks and submerging entire towns in knee to waist-high water. Within days, nearly 49,000 residents found themselves marooned on rooftops and impassable roads, as main highways turned into rushing torrents. State emergency crews, local firefighters, and community volunteers waded through chest-high currents to evacuate families by boat and helicopter, racing against rising waters and collapsing levees. Schools and hospitals were shuttered, power lines snapped, and livestock swept from pastures, while evacuation centers overflowed with displaced citizens clutching cherished possessions. As floodwaters finally began to recede, hundreds of homes lay in soggy ruin, and a spirit of solidarity surged as neighbors, charities, and government agencies banded together to rebuild shattered communities. Number 3. On January 29, 2025, as evening settled over Washington, D.C., an American Eagle regional jet on approach to Reagan National and a U.S. Army Black Hawk helicopter collided mid-air in a terrifying flash of metal and fire. Wreckage rained into the Potomac River below, sending rescue boats and Coast Guard teams racing into the icy water to pluck survivors from floating debris. Victims were airlifted to George Washington University Hospital while first responders braved swift currents and sharp wreckage. In the aftermath, the NTSB launched a full investigation into air traffic control communications and flight protocols. The collision stunned the capital, prompting nationwide scrutiny of civilian-military flight coordination. Number 2. On June 12, 2025, Air India Flight AI171, a Boeing 787 Dreamliner, roared down the runway at Ahmedabad before suffering a catastrophic engine failure seconds after takeoff. The stricken jet veered off course, plowing into a medical college hostel and nearby market before erupting in a fireball that lit up the pre-dawn sky. On board were 241 passengers and crew. On the ground, at least 30 bystanders lost their lives amid collapsing walls and exploding fuel. Miraculously, a sole passenger pulled from the wreckage survived with critical injuries. Emergency teams battled roaring flames and scattered debris, racing to pull victims from mangled seats and shattered glass. In the wake of the tragedy, authorities grounded all 787s for inspection, launched a high-level safety inquiry, and declared 3 days of national mourning. Number 1. On June 17, 2025, a surprise marriage proposal balloon flight over Boituva, São Paulo lifted off with 33 elated guests, only to be ripped apart by sudden gusts as the unlicensed craft plunged into a sugarcane field. Flames erupted, smoke billowed, and what began as celebration turned to chaos. 27-year-old Juliana Pereira was killed instantly, while 11 others suffered severe burns and fractures. Farmers racing to the scene found twisted metal and spilled sandbags strewn across rows of cane, as emergency crews edged through the scorched wreckage to pull survivors from the fire. Local authorities swiftly detained the pilot on charges of aggravated manslaughter and illegal operation, sparking a crackdown on uncertified balloon rides nationwide.